guys, so my project for the next couple weeks is going to be Yumeko Jabami from Netflix's series Kakegurui. I know I'm a little bit late to the hype train for this one, but it's a cosplay I've really wanted to do basically since the series came out. I just have not had the time basically till now. But now that I do have the time, I'm super excited to get started. This first week will be focused on the shirt and the skirt, and while they're pretty basic, they should be really good base pieces for the jacket, which will then be my later part of the project. Like I said, I'm super excited to get started, so why don't we just jump right in. For Yumeko's shirt, the pattern I'm using is McCall's M7575, and I'm keeping it pretty much exactly how the pattern is suggested to be used. The only exception is, I don't know if you can see on this pattern, but the front placket and the cuffs are cut on the bias. I'm not doing that. That's silly because my fabric is just white. I've gotten all the pieces cut out and traced. Basically, the only major alteration that I'm going to be making is I'm going to add a tuck or a pleat right down the front, since she has that going on in hers as well. What I'm going to do to put a tuck into the pattern is I am going to split it parallel to the center front, just along one straight line, and then I'm going to pull the pattern apart by about an inch, or by exactly an inch, and then that will account for the space that's taken out once I then fold it like with the pleat. So that'll end up being like that, but then we need the pattern to be wide enough to accommodate that. Okay, so I've got everything cut out now, and before we start stitching, I'm gonna fuse all of these pieces. So I have fusible interfacing for the cuffs, the yoke, the collar, and the front plackets. So when you're using fusible interfacing, you don't want to use any steam on the iron because that can get in the way of the bond of the glue to the fabric. So you just want to use a really hot iron that is no steam. And then also, because I'm working with a white fabric, I want to make sure that there's definitely no colored fabrics, like little threads in my interfacing. And to protect your iron and your ironing board from the fusible interfacing, you should definitely use a press cloth. You just let it sit for, I don't know, like 10-20 seconds, and then you move on to the next spot. wanted to talk about which way to press darts really quick. That was something that really eluded me for a while when I first started sewing. And basically, it's very counterintuitive. You kind of want to press it in the opposite direction than makes a lot of sense. And that's because of the direction that the shadow happens. So my lighting is kind of harsh right now, and that's to exaggerate these shadows. But when you press the dart up rather than down, it creates a shadow underneath the dart here, which then like looks better than if it were, I don't know if I can even do it because it's pressed in there pretty good. But if you were to press the dart this way so that it's going down instead of up, you get a shadow above the line, which is less pretty. Vertical darts, you want to press towards the center. So you are pressing that towards center front here, center front there. And then on the back, you press it towards center back. And that is for the same reason, so that the shadowed line can happen on the side farthest to the, I guess the side of the line that is farthest to the side of the garment. I've got the shoulder seam stitched together. It kind of doesn't look like it because there's a whole convoluted thing you have to do when you're using a yoke, but I am now grading the seam, and basically what you do with that is you cut each seam allowance to a different length, with the shortest starting on the inside of the garment and the longest being on the outside of the garment. And that's so when it folds back on itself, the longest layer will shadow the cut seam allowances of the other two layers. A little trick I like to use when there is not a specific marking for my seam allowance on the plate, you just stick a post-it note on there and it's a really handy little seam guide. This shirt is all done, buttons and everything. So now it's time to move on to the skirt. The skirt is going to be 2 panels of fabric that are 41.5 inches long, to account for a 1/2 inch of the seam allowance on either side. And then I want my skirt to be about 15 inches long, so with the 2-inch hem and a seam allowance for the top, for the waistband to attach to, that'll be 18 inches. So 2 panels, 41.5 by 18. I want the pleats to be 1.5 inches because that divides nicely into 27 inches, which is my waist measurement. So with that 27 inches, the waistband is going to be 27 inches plus a 1/2 inch underlap and a 1-inch seam allowance. I want a 1-inch wide waistband. So when that's folded in half, that'll end up being 2 inches. 1/2 inch on both sides is 3 inches wide total. So the waistband will be cut from a strip of fabric that's 28.5 by 3 inches. Beavet! Where are you going? Oh, are you okay? Are you okay, baby? Hello. piece is cut, I'm going to be putting in the zipper first. And that's just because it's a lot easier to put the zipper in when everything's flat, and then I'll be able to just pleat directly, like, over the zipper, and it'll be hidden. I like to baste all of my zippers in by hand before I take it to the machine. It might not be any faster than having to sew it multiple times, but it's definitely less frustrating because this way I know I only have to sew it once because I won't mess up because it's stuck there. Now that I've got the zipper in there all nicely, I've also gotten, I can't unzip this with one hand, oh well, it's there, I promise. I also put in the other side of the hem, so I've got basically a big donut of fabric. And before I do any pleating even, I'm going to put the hem in, just because it's a lot easier to do before the fabric gets pleated than afterwards, because you don't have to deal with all the folds. So to do that, because I don't really want to serge this, because it's pretty nice. I could just serge it, but instead I'm going to do hem binding in Hug Snug. So Hug Snug seam binding. So what I'm going to do with the Hug Snug is stitch it to the bottom edge of the hem, and then I'm going to turn the hem up 2 inches, and then I'll hand stitch the overlap of the seam binding to the body of the skirt. If you use this stuff to do anything and you end up washing something in the future, make sure that you press this first, just because it'll shrink up a lot. Just finished the skirt. The last part of this video is going to be doing the little neck sash that she has, but I'm tired for today, so that'll be a project for tomorrow.
I bet the neighbors can hear it too. Probably. Oopsies.
Oh, you want to play with my microphone? I see. So I'm having trouble getting this to be a straight line across so that I can just line up everything so it's nice and straight and parallel, perpendicular to the grain, whatever. So a really super easy way, if your fabric won't rip and it's hard to find it, you can take one of these little threads here, pull it out. This line here is that thread that I just pulled out, and that is a cross-braided thread. So using that line, I'll be able to line everything up super straight, just to make nice strips. It's good for getting a really straight edge to the end of your fabric. This is what the strip looks like all stitched together. I left a little gap here for turning, and to get these nice little pointed edges, I kind of just drew a couple of angles here. The other side shows it better. I tried a different couple angles to see which one I liked best, and then I ended up liking the middle one the best, so I went with that. And just stitched along that. When you get to these little points, it's good to dial down the stitch length when you go around these points, just so when you trim it out, it doesn't fray. Yeah. I've marked out the placement for the closures. I think I'm going to use a hook and eye just because the snap is going to be pretty bulky. But it gets a little gold button on the very front there, and then I'm going to stick a hook and eye underneath to attach these. But I've marked them out just by like laying out where I think this would look nice. And I used a pin on either side of the overlap to mark that, and then to mark where the button should go, I've marked across so the button will go right in the middle, and that's just centered on where these intersect and where these intersect. Thanks for watching. This was part 1 of my 2-part series on Yumeko Jabami's school uniform. This time I made just the base of the costume, so it's the button-up shirt, the skirt, and this collar, necktie? The necktie. Next time I'll be covering the jacket, and I'm going to be diving back into tailoring, which I haven't done in a couple years, so that should be an exciting refresher on those techniques. I know this wasn't the most exciting video because these pieces are pretty simple, but they're serving as a really good base for the costume. So even if it was kind of simple, I hope you learned something, or you saw something in here that you didn't know before. If you did, let me know what it was so that I can try to include more things like it in the future. If you knew everything, then let me know if there's something specific you'd like to see from me. Gaia, can I use my computer? Please? Please? Oh! Oh! Oh.